Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. I see there are people still coming in, so I'm just gonna get started. So as you probably noticed, like in July, I've had this theme of discussing different components of authenticity, being authentic, what it means to be true to yourself, and having that courage to just be the way you are and accepting the way you are, which kind of helps you to then maybe deal with life in a more gentle way without all that pressure. So to wrap it all up, I thought that I'll conclude it with this live stream and discuss maybe authenticity from this point of view, where it's a simple present. It's simply about showing up and just being. And there are lots of benefits to this attitude. First of all, we know that who doesn't struggle with procrastination or laziness or feeling pressured to do certain things, to accomplish things? Especially in the Western society, we have all these expectations around success and, being a specific person maybe, right? Having money and being able to always keep going and be strong and stuff like that. But with this idea of showing up, all these expectations need to go through the window basically. And it's a very simple practice that I'd like to talk about today, which will kind of conclude this whole subject of being true to yourself and authenticity, and all these different components of authenticity I've been talking about throughout July. So if you're not very familiar with my material, I invite you to my website to check the latest article on the self-authoring process, which is related to this idea of authenticity and creating yourself, and also the video I posted on YouTube on the courage to be yourself basically. And if you subscribe to my newsletter, you probably receive my email on the how to work with 4 different components of authenticity. All right, so let us get started. So I thought I will approach this subject first of all from this idea of the authentic self versus the ideal self. So perhaps we have this idea of always striving, always being at our best, and that our authentic self is actually the self where we are at our best. But is that really a truth? Is it really truth where you feel that if you need to be authentic, you have to do something or be someone or achieve something? So I think very often it's might be that our ideal self and the kind of expectations we might be having, or the image of ourselves at our best, might be a little bit commingling too much with our authentic self. So on the one side, we have the ideal self. So these are all our expectations. These are our kind of images of who could we be if we were successful, for example, or what we're doing wrong, or maybe what we could be improving in our lives, or in our personality, or in our behavior, right? So there's all this, probably a list of things that make us feel like, all right, this is what we are striving towards. This is the best me, the best version of who I am. But then on the other hand, there's the authentic self. So this is how you are right now. So with the authenticity, you basically just show up. That's the whole point. But there's more to authenticity. Maybe it sounds a little bit complicated, like you have to do something or you have to be someone to be authentic. But actually, I think that the whole kind of maybe pop self-help culture, they pumped this whole idea of authenticity a little bit too far. Because the whole concept now revolves around this ideas that you have to do something, you have to be someone to be authentic. Stop lying, start doing this, stop doing that. And I've been kind of discussing that as well. But I think there's a simpler approach to authenticity. And that's that idea of just showing up, of just being. And yes, there are maybe tips and tools I have been giving. And yes, that can be helpful in being authentic. But essentially, I think from this kind of different perspective, I think approaching authenticity as this very simple concept of just showing up can be very helpful. So we know this distinction between these two kind of parts of ourselves, and there's way more different parts to ourselves, way, many more different selves that we probably could become aware of in the process. But just to simplify things, we know there's this ideal self that I described, and then there's this authentic self. So what happens when these two selves kind of maybe join together a little bit too closely? That's where we start feeling pressure, right? That's where we start feeling this kind of pressure to accomplish something, or punishing ourselves for not being in a particular way or not doing something in a particular way, anything like that. So all that kind of pressure and maybe self-criticism and all these expectations of how we should be is kind of very different and than the authentic self, and might actually start in a way maybe influencing the authentic self in a way where we cannot be authentic, basically. So what happens is that we might live accordingly to our ideal self, thinking that we are authentic, but we are not really authentic. So I think in these situations, and I think this is a very common problem. For example, imagine yourself you set up a new goal, right? That's your ideal. You set an expectation for yourself that you want to start working out regularly, or you want to change your diet, whatever that is, or you want to start anything, right? You set that new goal, and by doing so, you start creating expectations for yourself that you have to, let's say, wake up early in the morning, or you have to read more, or anything that will help you to accomplish that goal, right? So let's say every day you expect yourself at 4 p.m. you're going to exercise. So this is your ideal self. This is the expectations, the goal. And tomorrow comes, 4 p.m. comes, where it's a time for your workout, and you don't feel like doing it. You don't want to do it. So maybe you procrastinate. Maybe you're feeling lazy. Maybe you come up with excuses. And what happens after that usually? You probably either feel guilty, or you give up on your goal altogether, or you feel maybe embarrassed or ashamed of not being able to accomplish such a simple goal of working out at a specific time. So you see, in this scenario, the ideal self and the expectations you created for yourself completely ruined the authentic self in a way that they became one. They became you, and you associated both of the selves as with one self. I don't know how else to describe it. So on the one side, maybe you took a realistic assessment. Maybe you look at yourself and you say, okay, I don't feel like doing it. Then you feel guilty for not doing it. But essentially you lived through the ideal self. Essentially you lived through the expectation you set, thinking that that is you, that's the reality, that only setting the goal is enough for you to identify with it. But that's not the case at all, as we all know. That's why it's so difficult to start new habits, or change your habits, or develop new skills or routines. So here's an alternative. That's what you could do. You set that goal. Okay, that is the ideal self, let's say. And then when the time comes, you kind of forget about it, but at the same time, you just show up. So what I mean by that is that when, to use the same example, when the 4 p.m. comes and it's time to exercise, you don't think about all these goals and expectations you created, but you kind of make a realistic assessment. You kind of be within yourself as you are right now, in your authentic self, and then you go and do it. And if you don't do it, that's okay. You can start one more time the next day. So this was just a simple example between kind of looking at this distinction between these two different selves. And this whole idea about the multiplicity of the self can be very helpful to manage not just these goals, not just these examples of like procrastination or laziness, but most importantly can help you to manage many different states that you're in, many different emotional states. And I kind of talked about it in the previous live stream. So knowing which kind of selves come up in different situations can be very helpful. But with this idea of showing up, I think very often that ideal self needs to be tamed. The power it has over, our behaviors or experiences can be really strong, to a point where, you can experience all these ideas of like self-criticism or shaming yourself or feeling humiliated or feeling guilty for not accomplishing what your ideal self wants you to accomplish. So you completely identify with the ideal without being your authentic self. And the paradox is, at least from my experience, is that the more I am in that authentic version, right, the more I just be or show up, the more actually things start flowing. So the ideal self, the goals I've set for myself, are not, the absolute expectations, an absolute guidance, an absolute map, but it's more like a little guidance, right? So you know kind of where you're going, where you need to go, but it's not that you have to do it. And just reading comments. So the thing is that, yes, there is a lot of pressure on all that accomplishments and self-improvement. And the whole idea of personal development is around making something out of yourself. But then with the authentic self and just showing up, that solves lots of problems. Because imagine yourself where you just push away completely the expectations you set for yourself and all that pressure, and you just start showing up. So let's say it's time for exercise. You don't imagine yourself that you have to exercise for 30 minutes because that's your goal, but you just go and stand there for 5 minutes. And there's this quote by, I think it's Woody Allen, who says that success depends on basically 80% of success depends on just showing up. So it's not about accomplishing something. It's not about pressuring yourself to fill in accordingly towards expectations, but you just show up without pushing yourself to meet all these single goals. And I think another thing is that with the ideal self, the ideal self basically orients us towards the future. So when we set all these goals, we make plans, right? We develop all these expectations and maybe some wishful thinking how we would wish to be. That puts us a lot into the future. So we kind of orient ourselves towards the future. And I think that's why it very often might be quite difficult to start something or to relax in maybe stressful situations or anxiety-provoking situations, because we are not here. We are not in the present moment. We are in that ideal self in the future where all the expectations and all the goals are. In contrast to that, again, the authentic self is more present-oriented. So you just have no expectations. You don't expect anything, but you just show up. And then that allows you to interact with this present moment and how things are with, completely different energy, because then you actually have energy and then you actually have motivation to interact with whatever experiences you have. So if it's, starting your exercise routine, you just show up and, if you're there, you might as well just start exercising, because what else are you going to do? So that's that whole idea. So obviously there is a time for planning, and I'm not here, I'm not advocating here for completely giving up planning or giving up goals or, just being completely in the present moment. Although that could probably work in some situations, that wouldn't be a very stressful life. But with the, obviously with the everyday demands, we do need to move forward a little bit with things. We need to take care of ourselves. We have responsibilities. So then obviously there is a plan, there is a time for planning, there is a time for setting goals, but I wouldn't make it as 80 or 90% of your time. Thank you, Alpha Doc. Thank you so much. So, but in a Western society, I think it's reversed, right? So most of the time we spend on planning and goals and what we're going to do tomorrow, what we're going to do on the weekend, right? What we're going to do next week, next month, what kind of job we're going to aim for next time, what kind of relationship, what are we going to do about that party that's coming up, whatever. Right? So this is all the ideal self, the future-oriented part of ourselves that pushes us and pushes us. Whereas with the authenticity, as I'm saying, it's about showing up and presence and just kind of being, allowing yourself to be. And then don't you think that that's where things are going to start getting a little bit more real and a little bit easier and kind of effortless in a sense, because then you don't have a pressure, then you don't have to push yourself, right? You don't have all these expectations chasing you. You don't have all these goals and plans coming up and again. So why not reverse the ratio and aim for, 20% of time for planning and setting goals, and then 80% for authentic and present kind of being. So what I'm kind of proposing in this video, I think is a little bit different and a little bit opposite to what the kind of social narrative is and what other people might be saying. And I'm not saying that this is something that will work for everybody, because maybe you're at that stage now in your life where you kind of need to push forward and you need to follow some expectations. But I'm basically proposing something opposite, something maybe counterintuitive, counter to what the society around us is doing. So instead of focusing constantly on doing, you want to switch that energy towards being. And that's how you conserve energy. That's how you actually are then able to spend your energy on things that are important to you, instead of running around, instead of feeling like, you're lazy, you don't want to do something, or you are exhausted, instead of feeling guilty or shaming yourself. If you switch the ratio from completely, from doing something all the time to just being, that's where you can actually engage things in a kind of effortless way, but also it's an easier way and more efficient. And in my opinion, it will lead you to more success than constantly doing and being busy and pushing yourself with all these expectations. So this is a little bit maybe opposite to what the society proposes, and all these motivational speakers is like, go after your goals and plan and do this and constantly do something and do something and do something. But I don't think that is the right path forward. I think that path forward actually leads to things like burnout and fatigue, maybe depression, anxiety, stress, and eventually maybe even emptiness and all that state where you don't even know yourself. So what I'm proposing is basically switching the focus from constant doing towards being. And then I think that's where the magic happens, because when you're more present oriented, where you're more orienting yourself from that present moment experience and how you are right now rather than how you wish to be, then you select things that you can actually do that are important to you. And sure, as I said before, it's nice to have a plan. It's good to set goals, because that kind of can guide you in terms of where you're going in life and, you know, what is important for you. But then when you operate from that present moment experience, you don't constantly pressure yourself. You don't feel like you have to do something, but because you are the way you are, you're just kind of showing up, as I call it. Then it's way easier to engage in things, because you do these things because you want to, not because you have to, not because you have a bunch of expectations and goals, but because you want to engage in these things. Sorry, I'm kind of losing my voice today for some reason. So I think now is probably the question, how do we go about developing this authenticity and essentially present moment orientation. So we see that the problem usually comes from the ideal self. So what do we do with the ideal self first? I think the first step is to drop expectations. So as I was saying before, I think the reason why it might often be difficult to start new things or to get into new habits is because we have these expectations, right? So this is the ideal self. There is this pressure. So I think the first thing to do to start taming that ideal self and shift more into this authentic and present moment experience is to start questioning these expectations and putting them a little bit more in the background, focusing on what's realistic. So instead of constantly expecting yourself to be someone, to do something, drop the expectations. So maybe you imagine yourself, you want to lose some weight or start a new diet, or maybe start a business or be more disciplined in general. Yeah, that's good. That's great. That's your little planning, a little guidance that you do for yourself. But you do that and you drop it. You let it be in the background. And you still focus more on the present moment experience and what you can do in that present moment. What do you want to do? Not what you have to, what you should do, what is on your list constantly, although there is a time for that as well. But what I'm proposing here is to kind of drop these expectations to, I would say, even to minimum. So let's say your ideal self, you set a goal for yourself that you want to maybe lose weight, which means that you have to go to the gym like 3-5 times a week, whatever. So instead of, when the day comes for going to the gym, instead of having that goal in your mind, focus on what you can do. So let's say for today, my goal is to just maybe go to the gym, whatever, but without constantly thinking about these goals that you have for yourself, not the outcome. Oh my gosh, I'm going to lose some weight. That's even worse. That creates that pressure, and the more you think about it, the more pressure there will be, the more expectations you create. And then when the time for the exercise is, you're going to feel like I don't want to do it anymore, because you drained all the energy, you spent all the energy on thinking about doing something rather than doing it. So dropping the expectations, shifting your mind into things that you can do right now, right? So again, develop plans, set some goals if you need to, but maybe avoid thinking about it all the time. Set a specific time during the day maybe for visualizing your ideal future, for planning, for making notes, for making lists. But if you catch yourself throughout the day constantly thinking about the future, thinking about the person you wish to be, or how you should behave in certain situations, or what you need to change. That's constantly being in the future rather than the present. So you're not focusing on things that you can do, you can change, you want to do right now, but you focus on these imaginations that you're having, basically. So if you shift that, think about the present moment. Focus on what needs to be done right now. Do you need to, I don't know, clean your room, for example? Do you want to go for a walk? Do you feel like working on your business? Do you feel creative? Do you want to exercise? So this is what I'm talking about. Instead of going along with the schedule or your plans and thinking constantly about the future, you shift your focus towards the present moment. For example, I personally use this system where I have a list of things I need to do. Like, obviously I have some goals and plans, but I have no schedule throughout the day, except if I have appointments. But for me, that's the way I organize my time. So whenever the time is right, I do it. And I have a list of things I can consult that I need to complete. And then maybe I organize my days by, let's say, by kind of times for work or times for play, whatever, free time. But I'm flexible. So I'm not constantly thinking like, oh my gosh, at 10 a.m. I have to start work. That's the, personally, at least for me, this is a precise recipe for procrastination and laziness. Because the more I think about it, when the time comes, I'll feel like I don't want to do it anymore. Like, because I drained myself, I made this goal or a responsibility or a task that I need to complete so big in my head that I don't want to deal with it anymore. It's gonna read some comments. Right, so kind of trying to orient ourselves more towards the present moment, so that I could also describe it like your center of gravity is in the present, and then you consult your ideal self. Then you maybe consult your plans, your goals, your lists, your expectations, whatever comes up, right? So you do set time for that when needed. But I would personally be mindful how much time is consumed in your life precisely for, your ideal self and goals and future. So what you need to do, what has to be changed, what you're not happy about. This is all imaginary. And I think the less we do it and shift that kind of center of gravity towards what can we do right now, what we want to do right now, can be very helpful. And as you probably noticed, I only use these adjectives of like, what can you do right now, or what you want to do right now. I don't use I have to do right now, or I should do right now, because then again, this is the ideal self, right? The pressure. You want to be more in this kind of more flexible state, where you cooperate with your plans and ideals, where it doesn't feel like a chore, but it feels like you're in control. Not your plans, not your goals, not your ideals, but that you are in the control and you choose what you want to work on. And I can feel like that might be a little bit misunderstood, and that maybe some people might be thinking like, if I let myself completely go, then who's going to complete all my duties or responsibilities? I'm just going to let myself go and be lazy. And I'm not going to accomplish anything if I'm not going to orient myself so much in the present moment without pressure. And I think there are a few potential remedies for this. So on the one side, I would suggest that if you see that potential, if that's what happens, I would look into your health. So things like, is your diet okay? Are you sleeping enough? Because if you have no pressure, and then you kind of end up being quote unquote lazy, then maybe you need rest. It's that simple. Maybe you need simple rest. I personally don't believe in laziness. There's always a reason for it. A second thing to deal with that maybe potential for getting into this mood of laziness and just letting yourself go is that maybe the goals you set for yourself, maybe the expectations you are setting for yourself, are not really aligned with what you want in your life. So that's why they feel like a chore, and that's why you feel lazy and you don't want to do them. So that's another possibility. And I think that's another also important to look into it. I think it's important, obviously, to look into your goals and expectations and the ideal self, and whether you really agree with these goals, whether you really agree with this ideal self. Is it something that you've created for yourself, or is it coming from the society? Is it coming from other people, or is it coming from, your maybe imagination that if you do all these things, you're gonna be liked, or you're gonna, get more friends, or you're gonna be perceived in a specific light. So I think evaluating all these goals and expectations is also kind of important, because when the present moment comes, when you are in this authentic mode being, when you're showing up to life the way you are, you want to look at the list of your tasks or the list of your goals and feel like you want to accomplish these things. Because if you don't want to accomplish them, then there's this conflict between your authentic self and the ideal self. So managing these goals, evaluating them against your feelings, basically, against your reason as well. So is it even practical what you're trying to achieve? Is it really necessary? Is it something that you really want in your life? So in my opinion, it has to, your feelings and the reason, they have to work together. I know many people say like, I'm so disciplined, I'm just going to use my reason, right? So this is rational, this is logical, I'm just going to do this because I have to. That's the path towards burnout, I guarantee, because they don't even know if they want to accomplish these things or not. So getting that harmony between what you want and your expectations, I think is very important, because once your center of gravity is in this authentic self, when you're showing up, you're just showing up with no plan, with no expectations. So the way you're going to start picking up things that you have to do, they're going to come from your mind that you planned before. They're going to come from your ideal self. And if these things, if these goals, if these expectations come up and make you feel like you don't want to do any of them, then they are not the right goals for yourself. So I think another danger of all this, making all these plans and expectations and having that ideal self, is that I think we can get, at least I have this tendency. I can get a little bit perfectionistic about them. So let's say I set a goal that, I want to go for a walk every day. And this is a very rigid goal, because it says that every day I have to go for a walk no matter what. So because I have this perfectionistic tendency, what happens is that if I miss a day, I get discouraged because I failed. I didn't go for my walk every day. So I wonder how often does it happen to you, for example, when you set that goal and you have a little setback, maybe a day or two. Maybe you didn't do it, maybe you didn't exercise for as long. Maybe you went on a new diet, but you started cheating a little bit. And then you just drop the goal altogether, right? So this is a little bit too rigid. So with this idea of showing up, you show up whenever you can and whenever you want. So if you do fail, if you don't exercise today, if you have a little cheat here and there, if your goal is maybe to be kinder to people, maybe you snapped at someone for no reason, that's okay. So I guess that takes also a little bit of acceptance that there will be some chaos here and there, and that you don't have to accomplish all these goals perfectly as you set them. So if you aim for, I would say even just drop the expectation and aim for 50%. I think it's a really good start. So I think all these expectations, as I was saying, like they not only need to be aligned with what you want and what is important to you, but also another thing about them, which I think is very important, is are these goals even practical and realistic? So let's say you imagine yourself, you want to, I'm running out of examples. All right, I'm going to reuse the same one. You want to lose weight. And you set your goal for going to the gym 7 times a week. Is that even, is it doable? Is it realistic? Is it practical? So when you start assessing your expectations one by one as they're coming out in every day, so that's another thing. Pay attention to all these expectations and pressure. What does this ideal self or the pressure wants you to do? I would take a good look at how realistic these goals are. So if they seem a little bit too much, maybe drop the expectations again. And get clearer. So when there is a time, so obviously you want to be in that center of authenticity, as I call it, or just showing up and being in the present. But when there is a time for planning, I would make it as vivid as possible. So not saying only that you want to lose weight, but how's it going to look like? How's it going to impact your life? What's going to happen to all your clothes that you have right now? So be as vivid as possible. How are you going to feel once you accomplish that goal? Because when the time comes, when you're in that present moment experience, when you're moving forward, when you're, showing up to these times and these experiences when you need to work on your goals, that vision is going to keep driving you forward. Then you know what you're working towards. Then you know that you don't have to constantly think and have a pressure to accomplish something, but you know that you're working towards that specific thing. So there's no pressure because that's where you're going. And there's no need for pressuring yourself. If your vision is clear and you're showing up and you're doing bare minimum of work, like 1%, you're already moving towards your goal. So I don't know. I think I make it maybe a little bit too simple, but I think it's generally important to reduce that pressure. And maybe some coaches, maybe some psychologists will tell you like completely the opposite. Like you have to discipline and you have to, wake up at 4 a.m. on the morning and stuff like that. My approach is quite different. Like I feel like we need to work with our bodies. We need to work with our unconscious mind, because the part of our mind that is conscious is a very small mind. So we have a limited amount of attention. We have a limited amount of things we can pay attention to. We have a limited amount of willpower and energy. So we need to cooperate with the whole organism that we are. We can't just wish for everything and keep pushing and forcing ourselves, because maybe at the end of the day, we are not entirely in control. So with this idea of showing up, you strive forward, you strive towards this balance and this kind of gentle way of being, where you allow yourself to be just the way you are and allow yourself to listen to yourself and what you can do, what you want to do right now. Is it really important? And if you don't want to do it, maybe it's not that important at the end of the day. If you find yourself procrastinating again and again, maybe it's not important right now. Maybe it's not the goal that you need to strive towards. So I guess that part of showing up is, connecting with this experience maybe of kind of a beginner's mind, where you simply don't know. You don't know what to expect. You don't know what's going to happen today. Are you going to manage to meet your goal? But paradoxically, what happens with this way of being, you free up the energy, you stop pushing, you stop forcing yourself. All that energy that is wasted on planning and overthinking and willpower and forcing yourself can be actually used on completing your tasks. When you just, shift your mind more towards cooperating with yourself rather than fighting yourself, allowing yourself to kind of flow through life rather than forcing yourself to move forward. So it's a little art, I guess, because it's not about this having the strict rules and following rules and being disciplined. The discipline, in my opinion, the discipline is just being able to be in that present moment and move forward, but in accordance with things that are important for you, with things that are goals that are important for you, that are aligned with how you want your life to look like, rather than how someone else wants your life to look like. So one more aspect in terms of dealing with that ideal self, maybe kind of shrinking it a little bit and shifting your focus, shifting your center of gravity towards authentic self, is being mindful of when you fail to accomplish certain things in your life, when you fail on your goals, when you maybe notice that you haven't been moving in the direction that you want to move. So that's where usually we might experience little setbacks, like we're not moving forward. Maybe there's no change. So I recommend doing actual assessment as to whether you've been working towards the goals you want, whether they are realistic, whether are you sabotaging yourself, and also paying attention to how you talk to yourself when you experience a setback or a failure. Because I think that has a massive influence on our motivation and how we move forward. So, for example, if each time you fail to go to the gym, or you notice yourself maybe procrastinating or being lazy, or maybe not meeting your standards, notice what's happening in that moment. Because I think very often we tend to either criticize ourselves or feel guilty or shame ourselves or whatever. I think it's fairly popular to maybe kind of disapprove of ourselves at that moment when we notice that. And the thing is that the more we do it, the less motivated we're gonna be in the future. So it's a little bit like a vicious circle. We struggle to do something, we punish ourselves, and then we don't want to do it even more because we anticipate that punishment afterwards, or in association with that task or a goal. So that's something to be mindful of about as well. So how do we deal with failures? How do we deal with little setbacks? A replacement for that is being a little bit kinder to ourselves. So again, I'm advocating today this more gentle way of moving through life. Maybe for some people it's a little bit too feminine, and I can see how it could maybe look more feminine. But you need both, regardless of your gender or whatever, right? You need that feminine ability to be in the present moment and to allow yourself to be and just show up. And of course, you need that more masculine ability to strive and push and go after your goals. But you can't just keep forcing yourself without allowing yourself to be and experience present moment and know yourself and what you really, really want. So, just quickly reading comments. Very humble goals. Yeah, that is a good idea. I like it. Setting humble goals instead of going for, perfect version of who you want to be. So as a last thing, I'd like to give you actual 4 tips, very practical things that you can start doing to develop more this ability of showing up and just being. Because that, in my opinion, that will help you to conserve energy and go after things that are really important for you. In addition to obviously improving your well-being, because once you start forcing yourself and being so disciplined and having all that pressure and stress in your life, once that's gone and reduced, then of course you're going to feel better. And I'm not a biologist to know what effect on your health can reduction of stress have. So the first step, these are very practical tips. So these are actually things that you can start doing. The first one is to start clearing distractions. Reduce distractions in your life to minimum. So things you don't really enjoy, things that don't support your well-being, maybe certain people, certain shows, certain habits that you have, maybe some foods. Social media, reduces as much as possible. It's not even that interesting anyway. So what else do you find distracting in your life? What takes away your attention from feeling good, from feeling in the present moment, from feeling authentic? Right, stop watching the news, as in the chat box. So reducing distractions to minimum helps you to kind of create this more empty space where you can just be. And maybe it does sound boring for some people, maybe who are used to constantly being busy and doing things. But once you start experiencing it regularly, having that clear space, it's gonna do real miracles on your well-being. So practically speaking, maybe it doesn't have to be as big. Maybe it doesn't have to involve so many things as clearing your attention. But maybe you want to dedicate a corner in your room or a whole room, if you have that possibility, or in your garden, where you just go and sit with no distractions for 5, 10, 15 minutes a day, maybe 1 hour even, if you do have time. So reducing distractions to minimum doesn't have to involve such a big project as completely changing your life around, although obviously these things are helpful. But it can be as simple as just creating space in your house where there's nothing happening. When there's just present moment, you can just sit there with nothing and just enjoy the space. And that's how you can start reconnecting with that present moment. All media is demonic. All right. Seems like you're opening space up to be more intentional with your activities instead of being scattered. You could interpret it that way. So instead of just doing random things and feeling pressured and doing, then you get very selective with things that you do. So you conserve your energy and you spend your energy only on things that are crucial, that are really important. And I'm not talking about things that are only work related, but it could be anything that makes you feel good, that is about your well-being, that is about, simple fun and entertainment. Why not? Maybe you can, keep a slot for watching movies or playing video games or whatever, but you do it because you want to, not because it's like a compulsion. So that was the first step, reducing distractions in your life, making space and showing up in that space. Just make a habit, just go and sit in your backyard 10, 15 minutes a day without doing anything. Just show up. The second tip for showing up and being more authentic is to start your day right. How do you do it? That is up to you. But generally delaying maybe the time between when you wake up and start your work, or start rushing around, or complete some chores that you don't like. Focus more on mindfully waking up. So whatever that routine means for you, but do things that make you feel good and avoid stress. And I think that that's another thing with the whole society. I think that it's a sickness. We have to rush in the morning. Like, most work starts at 8, 9 a.m. So most people are used to wake up, rush, boom, 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 this, and they knock things out one after another. And there's no time for enjoying that space, for showing up, really. So how do you want to show up in that day? You want to show up stressed out and anxious from the time where you wake up? Or do you want to start that day right, where you're relaxed and you're more present and you're kind of more grounded in yourself? So maybe you could bridge the first practice with the second practice, where you start your morning with showing up in that empty space that is clear from distraction. For 5-10 minutes, you just sit there with your thoughts. So starting the day right, I think it's very important. The morning routine. I'm not gonna tell you what to do, because I think it's personal. You have to find the right things for yourself. Some people do journaling, some people exercise, some people walk, some people do reading, some people maybe start with some housework. Whatever makes you feel grounded and helps you to kind of connect with that present moment, instead of rushing and instead of feeling that pressure straight away. Now, the third tip I have is to generally slow down. So slow down anything in your life. Try, or at least try. I know maybe with some things maybe it might be difficult, but not just that, but also the way you are. For example, I don't have to speak that quickly in this video, but I do it partially because I have lots of information I need to say, because that was the plan. But things like the way you speak, the way you do things, when you slow down, you can probably feel the energy. Then, it gets calmer and more quiet. And then it's easier to connect with yourself and know how you are in that present moment, what you want, what is important to you right now. And you don't have to experience that anxiety or stress. And if you feel that pressure to do something, you can kind of just keep it on the side. Okay, you do it later. But with slowing down, it's about just remembering that very simple phase to slow down can be very helpful to quiet your mind a bit more and help you to reconnect with this present moment experience. So it could be anything: the way you speak, the way you think, the way you do things, or simply the way you are. Because if you show up in your quiet space with no distractions and you're like, all right, 10 minutes, I'm in a rush, that is not really what I meant at all. So you need to slow down as well to be able to enjoy that space. And then with that general idea and experience of slowing down, you move yourself, from that future-oriented thinking and being to more present moment experience as well. Okay, and the last tip, this one is, depends what you like. But in my opinion, I think embracing simplicity, minimalism, or just simplicity, it doesn't have to be crazy minimalism or anything like that. I think it can be very helpful, because that summarizes a lot in terms of what I talked about today. With simplicity, you just reduce everything to what is really meaningful, really relevant to you, really important. So how does your desk look like? How does your room look like? or your house? Do you really need all these things? Is it cluttered? Does it feel, like it's a little bit disorganized? So with simplicity, you focus only what is kind of necessary, what is really needed. So you reduce all the stimulation that goes around you, and that could be anything: your social media, your gadgets, decorations in the house, how many clothes you have. All that things contribute to distractions. But with simplicity and minimalism, when you start reducing things to what is really necessary, what you really want in your life, what is relevant, you most likely you will notice that actually that can help you to enjoy things a bit more, because then you can pay more attention. The more things you have to focus on in your life, the less you're going to enjoy things, because then you're not going to have as much attention for each of these things. So it's all kind of about making everything simpler for yourself. Do you really need to have that lengthy maybe workout routine, or is it enough to simplify? For example, so with embracing this simplicity, it's about reducing everything to bare minimum, basically. And then you can start investing your energy in the right things. Then you can start enjoying things how they are. All right, guys. Do you have any questions before I go? No coffee in the morning, they ruined. Yeah, and coffee important, if that's what you enjoy. So one more thing, if you have any questions, feel free. I can answer that. But one more thing I was gonna say about slowing down. A good maybe method for slowing down generally is to observe things. So shift your focus from doing things, from pressuring yourself, from figuring out things, from wanting clarity, from wanting understanding, to observing things how they are. I think that can be a great help in generally slowing down and clearing things from distractions, because then in a sense it's a little bit like giving up. Like, all right, I don't have to control it as much anymore. I'm going to shift to observing things, being a bit more receptive as well. So balance is key. Mamu asks. So balance is key. It's okay to dream, to plan partially, but not in excess. To remember to enjoy the journey and the present moment. Thank you, Mamu. Yes. So you shift from, because I think we have this tendency to constantly plan or be in the future in a sense, or in imaginations a little bit. So yes, balancing could work for you. Joshua asks, how did people get such outsized expectations of what they can accomplish in a day or a week? I think it might be tech. Yeah, I think it's possible. Might be tech, but the first thought that came to my mind, I think the reason why there might be so much pressure generally, and all this overemphasis on achievement and work and stuff like that, because we have to work, because life is kind of expensive a little bit, depending maybe on the country or where you are. But I know in the West, life can be a little bit expensive. So without getting too political, but I think we are a little bit in a trap of needing to work so much in order to survive. But actually slowing down and, you know, clearing distractions and kind of remaining calm under all that pressure that comes not just from ourselves and our mind, but from the society, from the system itself, I think it can be very helpful, because I think that in general, the most important thing you can do for yourself, or I can do for myself, is to take care of ourselves and our well-being, and spend the energy right for things that are really important. So instead of running in circles and panicking and feeling anxious and feeling like, you know, there's so much pressure from outside of ourselves and trying to survive, trying to make it to the next month or whatever, that's not a good state to be in generally. And it's not going to lead to much accomplishment. And I know it's difficult to say. Maybe, you know, some of you think like, oh, I'm so comfortable here. But I have to work too. And that's what I noticed. That's what I noticed in myself. That's why I chose this path of self-employment for myself, because I can slow down. And then actually I can work and accomplish more than people who work 80 hours a week. For what? For stress and anxiety. So slowing down. And I would encourage everyone to think about that financial independence and you know, maybe starting your business or being self-employed, to take care of yourself first and foremost. Or changing the place you work for the one where you don't have to constantly feel pressure and strive. All right, any more questions? All right, guys, so I'll let you go. Before I leave though, just a short announcement. I will be taking a short break in August because I have some things I have to do, and it's going to be very difficult for me to create content, to keep writing and be on YouTube. So the next time I'm going to see you is going to be on the beginning of September. So next month. Can't believe it's August again. All right, guys, so I'll see you next time. Thank you so much again for joining. Thank you for all your support. Thank you for always being here. It means a lot, so it doesn't feel like I'm talking just to my laptop, basically. I'll see you all next time. Take care.